Hello and welcome back to Read Becca. This is a very exciting video because we are here for the first book haul of 2025. You see, I was doing a Read What You Own challenge for 2025 to read 25 books. Apologies for the cat jangling over there. That is per usual. So anyway, book haul. Coincidentally, I wrapped up my challenge and just in time for the big, massive book sale in my area. That is a big charity sale. Proceeds go to literacy charities. And also, Half Price Books is one of the big sponsors of this thing. And so you get a coupon for 15% off at Half Price Books if you go and buy stuff. So naturally, I'm going to have a subsequent book haul eventually in the future with my coupon for Half Price Books. But anyway, so I read my 25 books and I'm now free to buy things. So I did very much buy some things and I pretty much replenished 25 new books. So that's where we're at. And I did really very well. The books here mostly are from that sale. I have a couple of brand new books that I also bought. Also very on sale, but they're specialty items. So we'll save those for last. So for the book sale books, I think I spent $51 and got 23 books, which is great. That is a fantastic cost. I think prices were up slightly this year from previous years, and I did go to the full price day, but I did great, I think. So let's start quickly with mass market paperbacks. There was not a lot of selection in sci-fi and fantasy. It was pretty picked over, and I think that's just the nature of things, that there's not as much interest in those sort of mass market paperback style fantasy and sci-fi, and a lot of the newer fantasy and sci-fi is getting just shelved in with fiction. I'm not really worried about that. So regardless, I picked up a couple of things. So first, I picked up The Iron Lance. This is the first of the Celtic Crusades by Stephen R. Lougheed, and he's an author that I just pick up anything I see of his. I have the second book in this series, so I'm glad to have the first. He writes fantastic historical fiction and historical fantasy, big chunky stuff that I usually very much enjoy. So I have not read this series and would very much like to. Next, two from an author that I've never read from before. I have In Conquest Born, and I have The Madness Season, both by C.S. Friedman. I think Black Sun Rising is probably the most well-known from this author, but I can't remember even who. Someone was just raving about The Madness Season. So I'm glad to have these. This is an author I have meant to try out. Definitely a name that I'm aware of. And then we have C.J. Cherryh, Writer at the Gate. I think this is in the Citeen series or universe. I'm not sure. Sorry, I was waiting for the cat-related earthquake to cease there. I don't know what's going on. Everyone decided to be exceptionally lively as soon as I started filming. It happens sometimes. So C.J. Cherryh, Writer at the Gate. This should be sci-fi, and it's kind of a winter planet. Cherryh is just one of those lady authors of sci-fi and fantasy that really was very prolific and kind of well-respected, but never gained wide mass fame. So I kind of grab anything with her name on it as soon as I see it in the wild secondhand. Same for this last mass market paperback. This is Beauty by Sherry S. Tepper. Tepper is someone, again, very respected, one of those ladies of sci-fi and fantasy that is niche but well-loved, and this is obviously a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but I know nothing else about it. So those are the mass market paperbacks, and that, I think, accounts for all of the sci-fi and fantasy in here. And everything else has a very kind of certain vibe to it. There's a lot of coziness and classics here. So let's start with kind of an outlier, I guess. Not really, because it's pretty cozy. But I got The White Cats of Avignon by Anna Bird Stewart. I know nothing about this, but it looked so cute. And really beautiful end papers. It's a minute. And some pretty illustrations throughout. Most of them are black and white, but a pretty little colored one there. And this is from 1946. So a nice little book that clearly was written for children, but it is a chapter book. So I will be looking forward to reading that. Then we have a classic, Thomas Hardy's Jude the Obscure. Now this is not the most fantastic copy, but it's certainly readable. And I have not read Jude the Obscure. We are currently in Misery May as I'm filming this, so I'm not going to get to it, certainly, but I am excited to have it for a future Misery May that is based on the misery inflicted by Thomas Hardy. Next we have a tiny book, and this is A Time to Keep Silence by Patrick Lee Firmer. I've heard the name of the author. I don't remember if I've seen this particular book, but I gather this is going to be a quiet story of Turkish monk life, and that really appeals to me. So there's a lot of that here. Next, we have John Banville's The Sea. I can't remember what this story is about. I have definitely heard people talk about it before. And we've got our crazy man, Mr. Earl, right behind me, who's running all over the place. So this was winner of the Man Booker, and Banville is someone who I have very much wanted to read. Everything that I've heard about his books has appealed to me, so glad to have this one, and another fairly short one. And next we have another classic, Stoner by John Williams. He's a Missouri author, and kind of a mundane story, I think, of an academic, a teacher, and just generally his life, and yet people seem to really, really love this story and associate with him, connect with him so much. So I very much want to read this one. All right, the next one is also an old one, but I don't know really what to think of this one. So I have Tenting Tonight by Mary Roberts Reinhardt, and I'm pretty sure Mary Roberts Reinhardt is Agatha Christie. It's a pen name for someone, and I believe usually this pen name is used for writing romances, if I recall. But I'm not expecting this to be a romance. It could be, but this is a lively account of a 1916 camping trip through Montana's Glacier National Park and Washington's North Cascades. So I don't know what to expect from that. I am thinking it's going to be very sort of mundane and just the account of that, which is lovely. Sounds lovely to me. I grew up in the West Coast near the Cascades, and so yeah, it sounds great to me, but I don't know what to expect from that one. And then some classics again, Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Very, very large. I haven't read any Dickens in quite a long time, and very much have been wanting to. And I think maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, I read The Warden by Anthony Trollope, and it really is kind of satirical of this. And this seems like it's sort of a tragedy of manners in a legal case, and that sounds great. So I know people love this also, despite the length. So I'm looking forward to it. And then I guess to Trollope, I just mentioned, we have Barchester Towers, the second book in the series that I just mentioned. I do have another copy of this already, but it is a tiny mass market paperback, and it's very cramped and little teeny tiny text. So this is a much nicer copy that matches my first book. And I believe this has like annotations and stuff. This is the Oxford World Classic. And actually, I should say the Barnes & Noble Classics, this edition is also very, very nice. I'm happy to have those. And then I also grabbed MFK Fisher's Celebrates Marseille, a considerable town, its glory and wickedness, past and present, its life and legends, and its mystery. Lovely, and of course, author photo with the cat. So great. So MFK Fisher is a sort of food writer, and very similar trajectory to Julia Child, who I really want to dive into some of her writing. Next. Okay, where are we at here? All right, the next two are kind of odd. I have never heard anything about them or anything about the authors, but they both give me similar vibes. So I need to quickly move my book pile. All right, so the first of the two is Mary Wesley's A Sensible Life. And this one is set in 1926, British resort goers vacationing. I think multiple families together possibly. And they're trying to have fun while there's looming change in the world. This one says looming, creeping Bolshevism. So there's big world change in that one. And then we have Sarah Orne Jewett's The Country of the Painted Furs. And this is illustrated by Douglas Alvord. It's very beautiful. And this one I grabbed because it has a very similar description. Sarah Orne Jewett's vision was of a gentle and generous people on a rugged and unforgiving coast. Of New England character and characters lined in colors of high summer and blue skies. Here we meet the people of Dunnett's Landing. First, the women, who are the most unforgettable characters of her book, the wise herbalist, Miss Todd, the independent Miss Blackett of Green Island, the abandoned and reclusive Joanna, and then the occasional men appear, their conspicuous absence from these tales quietly symbolizing the abandoned coastline, the population depleted by a generation, favoring the bustle of nearby cities and inland towns. The small vignettes that fuse so beautifully to comprise this country of pointed furs linger long after the book is closed. But this is taking place in 1896, or thereabouts. And it's looking at a world surrounding the Civil War and dealing with the change around that. So small town life in a time of change sounds very interesting for both of these. Then I guess this one kind of fits with the fantasy I showed earlier, actually. I didn't realize, I forgot I had gotten this. We're into the couple hardbacks that I have here. The Book of Merlin by T.H. White. So I do have Once and Future King on my shelves, and I have not read it. This is the unpublished conclusion to The Once and Future King with a prologue by Sylvia Townsend Warner and illustrations by Trevor Stubley. So this one looks lovely, and I'm almost more excited about the Sylvia Townsend Warner intro, really. But it's very nicely formatted, like really nicely formatted, lots of space. I like that. Let's see if we can find an illustration, some ants. So yes, happy to have that one. Another foodish book. This one is a novel, Hotel Patti by Peter Mayle, famous food guy. So I know nothing about this whatsoever, other than I am familiar with the author, another one like that. Another author cover grab, Mary Stewart's The Ivy Tree. I just read Thornyhold by Mary Stewart and adored it, and so I will be grabbing anything by her that I see that I don't own. Rosamund Pilcher, Winter Solstice. I think this is, again, going to be very like calm, gentle reading, very wintry vibe, so it'll get saved for next year. I do have another one of Pilcher's books, but this is probably all on Gina's standard because she has raved so much about Pilcher's work. And lastly, for the hardcovers, I have David Mitchell's The Thousand Autumns of Jacob de Zoet. I don't know hardly anything about this. Jimmy Nuts recently read this year and was talking about kind of how it won't work for most people, but he really loved it, or he really enjoyed it, thought it was very evocative. And I am on my David Mitchell journey now. After reading Slade House, I've been very excited to get into David Mitchell, so I'm glad to have another of his books on my shelves. And then we're almost done with the sale books. So I got Nancy Mitford's Love in a Cold Climate. This one, I think, solidly goes down to Aaron read a book, having sold me on the Mitfords being, I don't know, their gossipiness seemed like it wouldn't be for me because they're very famously gossipy socialites, I think, who wrote a lot of letters and journals, these Mitford sisters. And so this one has come with a specific recommendation, and I'm glad I found it. And then I have This Is Happiness by Niall Williams, another rural life book to round out my finds. This one came up a couple times very recently. I think once was in an author discussion, maybe, and the other was from Dia at Novel Idea, brought it up in, I think, a tag. So randomly it got mentioned a couple times in the same week, and it sounded delightful both times, so I'm thrilled to have come across it. I think this is small town rural Ireland, like a very forgotten small town that is just finally belatedly getting electricity for the first time. I don't believe it's contemporary at all. I think this is more historical, but that sounds really, really intriguing. So those are the secondhand books. That's a lot. But then I got a couple of books from Evil Corp. Very, very on sale. The first one I bought brand new just to support sort of the author. So I got Lateral, based on the hit podcast by Tom Scott and David Boddicum. Lateral is weird. So this is almost more of a game than a book. If you like what if, things like that, absurd questions, this is that. It's a series of questions and then kind of working through the answers. So like, which town in South Dakota uses the slogan, where the battle wasn't? And then there are clues for you to figure out. So this is kind of the warm-up, it says. So there are clues to get to an answer. And then it gives you the full informational description of that. So you can play this as the game on the podcast, which they do. He hosts it, and then there are guests come on and try to guess the answer to the weird question. So I think it's going to be just light, fun snippets of nonfiction is how I'm going to treat it. So the specialty books. There was something that I read for the first and only time in college that's a very iconic reading in sci-fi and fantasy, one of the greats. And recently I had been really thinking, I kind of want to reread that. And I realized I don't have a copy of this very iconic thing. And so I had kind of had my eye out, and randomly, I don't often check Evil Corp's website, but randomly I happened to be on there looking for something else, checking prices for something else, and stumbled across the fact that the specialty editions of Lord of the Rings et al. Were extremely, extremely on sale, like half off. And so I kind of had to do it. So first, I guess let's start with the really specialty editions. Recently, there was released these really high-end illustrated editions of The Lord of the Rings and The Silmarillion and The Hobbit. So I have now these super duper fancy illustrated editions. You can see there are beautifully sprayed edges on both with the Elvish. This one actually has a hole in the in the front for the eye on the cover to stick out. Very cool. And they come with maps actually beyond the illustrations that are inside. I'm sure everyone has shown this. Like, this was going around on Fantasy BookTube all over the place. The illustrations, I'm actually kind of surprised. They are not on glossy or extra thick paper. This is not a very good illustration, the Buckland Fairy, but they are Tolkien's illustrations himself. And for this one, for the Silmarillion, let me show you the cover because this one is extra gorgeous. It does not have a cover hole, but it does have a really cool printing on there. And this one has an especially beautiful spine. So yeah, and it also comes with the maps folded in. Very cool. So I have not read the Silmarillion before, which is cool, and I've wanted to read it. I know it's more dense, but I kind of like dense history stuff. So I'm thrilled to have these, the Complete Lord of Rings and the Silmarillion, in beautiful editions. Now, they do also have a Hobbit, but I did not, this is going to make a lot of people cringe, I'm sure. But equally on sale, they had multiple different editions of these books. It was not just these books, so I don't know why that was. But I made the decision to go with this edition of The Hobbit, illustrated by Jemima Catlin. I love a naked hardback, a cloth-bound naked hardback, and that's what this is. This just feels really beautiful. And this one is very heavily illustrated. Like, there are little illustrations on most pages, full page illustrations. Like, there's just a ton of illustration to this. So I'm pleased currently with my selection. I really debated if I wanted to get the also illustrated one, get 2 copies. I was like, I can't justify that. And I like this one better. So all of them were like 50% off or plus. So I think I did okay. It was very reasonable. I was a little worried about the shipping and damage. I'm not someone who really worries about if things get slightly damaged, and everyone knows shipping from Evil Corp is consistently really badly packaged. But they were contained in plastic wrap, so nothing did actually get damaged. Fantastic. So there is my refill, my restock from my Read What You Own challenge now. I'm absolutely stoked about all of these books. So now I'm gonna put them on a shelf and not think about them for another year until my next Read What You Own challenge probably, right? No, I will absolutely get to some of these. Some of them I already have some plans for things they can fit into in the near future. So that's very exciting. I'm really excited for all, especially the kind of cozy, gentle reading that makes up most of this, the classic old school stuff. That's my vibe, I think, for 2025 for sure. So let me know if you've read any of these, because these are not super duper popular books, but I think my corner of BookTube definitely vibes with a lot of this. I really didn't even make it into like the nonfiction section at all, so I feel like kind of missed out there, but I got too much as it was. So a fortuitous trip to the book sale and a couple of special editions I'm thrilled to have. Let me know down below what I need to get to imminently, what you are excited to see on this pile. So with that, thank you so very much for watching.